Hi there, my name's Andy Ebbs. I'm a solution consultant at OpenText. I specialize in migration and disaster recovery, and today we're going to be talking about Carbonite Migrate, which allows you to migrate simply between different environments. So today's demonstration will be VMware to Proxmox, but it could equally be from Proxmox to VMware. It could be physical to physical. It could be Azure to Amazon, or Amazon to Proxmox, or Proxmox to KVM, or any other platform that you might be using. All we need is a requirement to be able to run the operating system that you have on the source in the same state on the target. So in this case, I've got a Windows 2019 machine running on my VMware environment. It's just a basic server, but it could be running an application such as SQL or SAP or Oracle. Doesn't really matter. We don't really notice the application. And then at the target end, I've built a target machine which is running the same version of Windows 2019. You can see it's I've given the name W19 Proxmox Target. I've also colored it in orange to make it a bit clearer. This target machine just needs the base operating system. You don't need to install any of the applications. So if your source is SQL, the target just needs to be a plain server. So my VMware machine, I've used blue as the desktop. We're going to move that over onto the Proxmox environment. So this orange desktop after a reboot will be blue, and it will have any applications and host name and things like that transferred across at the same time. So going back to the source machine, I'm going to quickly create a file on the desktop just so we've got some sort of point in time so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to create a text document, and I'll say demo start. So now I've got that file there, I'm going to go to the Carbonite replication console, which I've just got here. And you can see I've added the machines in that we're going to be using. So I've got W19 ESX source, which is in my source machine, and W19 Proxmox target, which is where we're going to be going to. You only license the source machine, and you need a Carbonite Migrate license. A standard one will do it, and you've normally got a couple of months to be able to do that migration. I'm going to choose that source machine, and I'm going to choose to migrate. You might notice there's protecting here because we can use this for high availability as well. So although we're doing migration today, the same tools can be used to keep servers in sync between different platforms and fail over in a disaster, which can be quite useful. So I'm going to go with migrate. And if we give it a second, I get a choice of different wizards. So I've got a file and folder one where I can just replicate files and folders. If I was going to a VMware environment, I actually have a slightly different workflow, which I'll probably do some videos of as well, which allows you to automatically provision machines in VMware and Hyper-V. But with Proxmox, we're not going to integrate with a hypervisor. In fact, we don't need integration of hypervisor at either end. This would work exactly the same as physical to physical or a machine in Azure going to Amazon. It's working at the operating system level using a filter driver. So I've already installed the filter driver on the source and target. I've added them to the console, and now we're going to select the files that we want to actually migrate. So I've got the full server migration workflow. We do get a summary of the files that are going to get copied across. It's all this stuff in green. If I then want to, I can modify it, but I'm just going to leave it as it is because normally they're sufficient. Then I choose my target machine and click next. And then we just need to look at the options that are here. Now, most of these options I'd normally leave alone. There's no need to change most of them. But I'm just going to make a couple of little changes. I'll try and explain why I'm doing that in a second. But here you can see the options, and we're going to go for one to keep the target machine's IP address. So we're going to fail over, and because I'm going to a demo environment and all my machines have IP addresses and so on, and it's easy for me to connect into them if I keep the same IP addresses. But also, if you go into the cloud, you'd probably want to connect to the IP address of the target machine because that's what your internet providers provided you with. And if you have a subnet of your own, you've probably got to add that in there somewhere, get the networking a bit more complex and one stretching and or VLANs and things like that. But if you use the IP address that was given to you by the hosting provider, it will always be there afterwards. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to return the target machine's network setting, although the default is to fail over the IP address from the source. I'm also going to turn compression on just to get the replication as quick as possible. And we can then click next. But basically, that's allowing me to create the job. It's going to validate. So just checking the settings. And if I click finish, it will drop me back down to the main Carbonite replication console. And you can see here is the job that's just been created. So W19 ESX source, the W19 Proxmox target. And it started synchronizing, although it's still calculating how much data it actually needs to synchronize across. You can see some of the stats here at the bottom as it's sending the data. This will change from calculating to having the mirror remaining to probably show about 13 or 14 gig. It's just a plain operating system at the moment, 15.5 gig. But it's going to start synchronizing that across. And you see some of that data at the bottom here. So it's 800 gig, so 800 meg, and after compression, sent about 332. So that's why I turned compression on. It's quite effective. Now it's going to take a little while to synchronize this data across. As you can see, it's only done like 4.8% here. Quickly, while we're waiting for that to complete, I'm just going to switch back to my environment. I've got my local host here. Maybe just modify this file just to show that it is a live server still, even though the data is being synchronized. And we'll say mirroring, because that's what we call this process. It's basically synchronization. So I've clicked mirroring there. And if we then look on the target machine, you'll notice that it hasn't actually updated its desktop. And that might be a bit confusing, but that's because we can't overwrite the live system files of this live operating system that's running in the target environment. So what we're actually going to do is put them into a temporary area. So if I go into the file system here and have a look on the C drive, we should find a folder called staging. And this staging folder is basically just a temporary area that we can store a copy of the files, things like program files and users and windows and so on. So go into users and go to administrator. What you can see is a desktop folder, which is a copy of the files that are on the desktop on the source machine. We've synchronized them across. So these are already replicated across. And you can see it's already up to date. And that's because we're not taking snapshots. We're not taking scans of the file system periodically. We see the byte level changes happen on the production server, and we immediately write them to the target. And I can show you that a bit more clearly if we go back to the source machine and instead of saying mirroring, if I just add a number 2 on the end of it, as soon as I commit that change, our filter driver sees that change and replicates it to the target. So this is a new copy of the file, or it's a replica copy of the file sitting on the target machine. It's on the C drive of this target machine, so it's already been synchronized across pretty much instantaneously. Now, obviously, you've got a slower network; it might have a bit of latency there, over distance. But that's another benefit of our software is we can queue data before we send it if the bandwidth's not available at that point. So it's going to take it still probably a few minutes just to synchronize between source and target, and we can go back to the Carbonite replication console and see that. It's about 20% now. So I'm just going to leave it there, give it 5 or 10 minutes. Hopefully the data will be synchronized across, and then we can have a look at the actual failover. Okay, after about 10-15 minutes, the data is in sync between the two. It's now saying protecting and idle and ready. We can see it sent about 13.5 gig, and after compression, about 7.4 gig was actually transmitted over the wire. And we're now in a position where we can do the failover. Again, I'm just going to quickly show you the virtual machines. So this is my Proxmox machine. Here's my source VMware machine. And I'll maybe just modify that file and say ready to cut over. Okay, so we've got that file on the desktop there. We can have a look at the target, and we'll see, it's already updated the replica copy on the target machine. So the next thing I'm going to do is go back to the Carbonite replication console, and we'll select that file, that job. You can also see there's another job here from the Ubuntu demo I was doing as well, and I could select multiple jobs to fail over at the same time if I wanted to fail over a group of servers, but I'm just going to choose the one which we've set up for now. So we'll just choose it, and we will choose to fail over a cutover, and we're going to cut over live data and click cutover. So this is probably going to take it another 10-15 minutes. It's a lot of stuff going on in the background. We're moving the files from the staging area over the top of the plain operating system, so that frees up that space. We're also going to be merging the registry that we captured from the source with the registry of the target, and any settings in the registry hardware keys relating to the VMware virtual machine, they're going to get discarded, and we're going to keep the ones for the Proxmox KVM virtual machine. As you saw, the setting that I made earlier involving the network settings means that we'll also keep the IP address of the target machine as well. So we'll be able to connect in and see that in a minute. I'm not going to keep you on the line here because it's at 10%. It's going to take it probably 10-15 minutes, as I say. But you can see some of the other stuff going on here. So at the moment, this machine hasn't actually failed over. It's still live, but you can't really change anything on it because the services are being stopped and things like that on there. If we look at the source machine, you can see that's now been shut down. So part of the process is we'll close that machine. So it means if there's anything in memory, it gets flushed to disk and sent over to the target. So it's zero data loss. And you know, also just to emphasize here, until that machine was shut down, the users were able to use it. So they could continue using the server while we were installing, while we were synchronizing, or mirroring, you know, terabytes and terabytes of data. Now, I've only done 13 gig today, but it could be a much bigger server. We can then keep it in sync once that data has been synchronized by just replicating the byte level changes to the file system, whether that's SQL database or system files or Word documents or new files or new packages being installed on that machine. And then when I press the button, things like SQL or Oracle, whatever might be running on that server, those servers are going to get shut down and they'll flush their data to disk, and we're going to make sure that's sent over to the target for the double take service stops and the rest of the server shuts down. So that ESX environment's now finished with. We can look at the Proxmox one. It's still orange. After a reboot, this will be a blue desktop, just like the original source machine running in VMware was. As I said, it's going to take a couple more minutes, so I'm going to put you on pause again, and I'll come back to you probably in about 5 minutes, because it's already at 42%. Okay, so again, it's getting close to the 100% mark, just like any good percentage bar. It will jump up quite suddenly. We're just going to see the percentage bar climbing here, but in fact, what I'd like to show you is if I go over to the target machine, which is currently still live, in inverted commas. I won't want to make any changes to it because most of the system files will have been overwritten by now. But once it gets to 100%, it's going to shut down this machine. So we should see this machine go offline and get rebooted. That's what you'd want to see that. Again, it's at 99%. So here we go. There we go. So there's the target machine being rebooted. And this is where all the settings that we've been moving around from the staging directory over to the plain operating system, and we've been merging the registries together. That's going to take place at this point. And I'm sure you've seen Windows boot before. It can take it a minute or two. We'll get the desktop up in a second. Here we go. And now I'll just add in my control keys here, and password. And immediately you can see there's a blue desktop. So that orange desktop that I had for Proxmox has been overwritten. We can look at the host name, and we can see that it still thinks it's W19 ESX source. So it's preserved the host name as part of the failover. We'd also preserve things like the security ID, the GUID of the machine, so it can be automatically added straight back into Active Directory without having to be removed and added. We can also, we failed over any applications or hotfixes or service packs that might have been on that source machine. In today's demo, I was using data center on source and target, but if the source was data center, the target was standard. After failover, the target would also be a data center because we were copying the live system state. And you can see there's that last file has been added to the desktop as well, but we are still on the Proxmox. And the original Windows machine is still there. And if I wanted to, I could start it up. So if something did go wrong in the migration, I could just turn off the target machine and restart this source machine, and it would still be exactly the same as it was before. So I think that's all I wanted to show you here. If anybody's got any questions, you can always send me an email or a message in chat. If you want to email me, my email address is aebs@opentext.com. Okay, thank you very much for watching.